And I should be live by now. I'm sorry, good people. I'm a little bit not used to the way this whole live thing works. But hi there, everyone. Welcome to the stream. I'm sorry I started a little bit late. Now, I am hoping, but maybe that's beyond better judgment, that Onitak will be able to join us because I wanted to talk about the Australian forest fires. On my other channel, I would say I've got the forest out, so we're going to talk about the environment today. Which is true. And considering Michael already said that he's going to leave me in about half an hour, that gives me a limited prospect, right? Oh, did the time maybe it automatically changed that, Michael Keller. And hi there, Anxious Aussie. I was hoping you could join me today. I did send you on Discord. If not, then you don't have to. It's obviously voluntary and all that. Oh, you have work on. Well, up to you. If you can, you're more than welcome to come. I did send you a Hangout link in Discord, Anxious. If not, then yeah, so be it. I mean, it is a little bit of a spur of the moment thing. So yeah, I can understand if you won't be able to. I did want to talk about the Australian bushfires and all that, and for the people that saw the background image, or no, not the background image, the thumb image. Yeah, that is a thing. I'll put the thumb up in screen. Maybe that's a good idea. That way people know what we're talking about, because, well, it is a thumb, obviously. Hi there, Ludicrous. Welcome to join us, mate. Where are you? Hop, hop, hop. I'm sorry, people. I should have prepared this better, but here we go. I'll find my headphones and mics. Now, that's a good thing. Okay, so for all of you people that are watching the stream, you should be able to see the Tasman sea temperature thingy. Why is this important? Well, I hope to get there in a moment when Onitak is here too. But there is the map, and I'm going to have to change some settings here as well. Up. There is this thing with the Tasmanian Sea that seems to be important. And this is not news. Sorry, I'm pressing the wrong button, it seems. There you go. This is not news. What it is, however, is interesting. Because we've learned throughout the last 40 years, roughly, that both wind patterns and seawater patterns have a huge influence on not only each other, but also the environment. Okay, everything has an influence on the environment because that's what it is. The environment is everything, hence everything is a part of it. Yeah, no, that is correct. But when we talk about how Australia is a desert island, for example, well, that has a cause. And 18 degrees is warmer than Lake Constance last summer, yes, but the location is slightly different, Michael. And why is it important? Well, the Tasmanian Sea is the main source of rain for Brisbane, Sydney, and Melbourne. The wind patterns yeah, I'm not sure if I can, if you guys can see. Oh, I'm not doing it like that. The wind patterns go from the south. Yeah, south. And they blow between Melbourne and New Zealand and then go in a small turn towards Sydney. Now, what does that mean? It means that water vapor from the Tasmanian Sea is the main cause of rain for Victoria and New South Wales, and in a lesser extent, but still there, for Queensland. Now, the wind patterns around the island of Australia. Yeah, it's a continent, but it's also an island. I'm not wrong. The wind patterns around the island of Australia are rather strange. Now, if I am able to show it to you, I hope I will. So let me see if I can find them. I had them earlier. This is important. Why is it important? Well, if we look at the wind patterns of Australia, and I'm going to have to do this, and then I have to do that. Hoppa. I'm really sorry, guys. I should have prepared better. I'm the one to blame for that. I really am. There you go. So now you should see the wind patterns. It's difficult to see, I guess, because they're really, really small. But the big green lines are a strong wind pattern, and the smaller are less strong. Now we're looking at the Horn of Africa here, but I want to be looking at the continent of Australia. Oceania? I don't know. This bit. Now if we look at the wind patterns, we see that the wind blows towards the Tasmanian Sea, and there's a slight angle where it then blows over the Tasmanian Sea and back towards Sydney and Brisbane, and lesser so to Melbourne. Now why is this interesting? I won't say important just yet. I'm going to say interesting. Well, if we look at the other wind patterns, you see that here, I'm not sure if you guys can see my mouse, by the way. Maybe I should check that before I say stuff like here. I'm sorry, good people. Up. I'm not sure if I hide cursor. No, not hide cursor. Guys, can you see my mouse, by the way? I'm not sure. And hi there, Paulo. And I'm still going to look at OBS if I know what I'm doing right or wrong when it comes to the mouse. Enable mouse clicks. No, I don't want you to enable mouse clicks. That's not what I want. Video. No. Hotkeys. No. No, you can't see me mouse. No, that's the problem. I'm trying to figure out how to put that right. John, do you have any clue how to... It should be in general, shouldn't it? I'm sorry, people. This is a little bit of a spur of the moment stream. I mean, I've been thinking about doing this topic because I really think this is an important one. And this has nothing to do with climate change, but it has everything to do about the narrative that people keep pushing on it. Okay, where are you? I'm not sure. Hide cursor over projectors. No. Okay. I'm sorry, good people of the interwebs, but it seems that I have no clue as how to turn on my mouse pointer in this thingy. Anyway, guys, you can see the map, right? I'm sure you can see the map. And I'm pretty sure that the people know where Sydney is and where New Zealand is, right? And the sea between those two edges, I'm going to center a little bit on New Zealand now so that people know this is New Zealand. And I'm going to move it back a little bit. Just a little bit. So you can see the wind patterns. And under New Zealand, you see that there's a circular movement in the wind patterns, which goes towards the South Pole, and not really, but you know what I mean. I really wish I knew how to get the bloody mouse pointer to go. Given that I don't do any preparation, I'm not the one to tell him anything. Okay, there we go. I'm sorry. I know. These are the wind patterns, by the way, so nothing else. We can see that the wind is going away from Australia in most of the places. This is why Australia is such a dry place. I mean, the wind coming over the Tasmanian Sea goes towards Brisbane and Sydney. I said that a moment ago. But the temperatures of the sea in Tasmania has been rather low. Now, it's not really low, but at only 18 degrees, it's not that high, especially for the area, because it's a warm area. Evaporation, therefore, isn't at its highest. And even if it were, Australia is an island with very, very little wind coming from the sea towards the land. It seems that the wind is almost deflected from the island. And I can hear someone else, so I'm going to assume that I'm no longer alone. Hi there, Anitak. No,
it's John. I've come to tell you.
Oh, wait. Something is really loud, and I'm not sure if it's my fuck up. So it could be.
Always, mate. You're in control.
Yes, I know. Which is quite...
Right, I'm here to tell you how to capture your mouse.
Okay, go on then. Settings, and then...
Right. In OBS.
Yes.
Your source.
My source, okay.
You can hear.
Yes,
Yes, I can, and attack. Hi there. Okay, in sources.
Yeah.
And I'm going to add some...
No, you're not going to add something.
Oh, okay.
In your sources, what you're showing is a source.
Yes.
I don't know whether it is a display or a window.
Okay.
Which one is it?
It's a window. It's a screen.
Right. So it's a screen?
Well, it's my second screen.
No! The source. There are types of source. Some sources, I've got window capture, video capture.
Yeah, this is a window capture then.
Right. Right-click it and click on Properties.
Yes.
There should
Capture
be
cursor. Yeah, there it is. Okay, thank you.
It's that simple, mate.
So
Thank
now you can see
Goodbye.
the mouse, everyone. Bye-bye, John. Thank you for helping.
Good morning, Maud.
What is a short stream without some yelling from John? Oh, thank you very much. That made me laugh too. But John, thank you very much for pointing that out, mate. I'm not that great when it comes to all this thingy-mabobs. Hi there, Anitak. Now, I'd love to have you over because we're going to talk about the Australian forest fires and all that. And there are some things that people kind of always neglect.
Yes, there are lots of things.
And
It's a multi-layered issue, our fires.
it is. And
It's a it's a perfect storm that's been decades in the making.
what the thing
Decades
is,
of weather and water
Yeah.
and wind,
and,
lack of water.
I mean, I know
land
very
management.
I know very little about the environmental history of Australia, but I know this.
Yeah.
It has the name of being a dry place.
Yep.
I mean, even
Yes.
fan fiction written about the countercontinent, which is from my favorite writer Terry Pratchett, the countercontinent obviously being Australia, the one thing that it always is clear is that it's dry as fuck.
Yep. Yep. It's either dry 99% of the time and underwater the other 1%.
I'm not sure.
It's always been a land of extremes.
Yeah. Now,
It's always.
theoretically speaking, you should be able to see in the Hangout the Earth with the wind patterns. Are you seeing it in the Hangout?
Can.
You can.
Yes, I am.
Okay, so this is what I'm showing everyone else as well, because I've been doing some research, and I know I'm not a climate scientist, people. I know, but I do try to make sure that I know what the fuck I'm talking about.
Yep.
And the green lines are the wind patterns. The brighter the light, the stronger the wind. Makes sense, right?
Certainly does.
Okay. Now, if we look at Sydney, this is Sydney, right? Around where my mouse is, this is roughly where Sydney is, right?
About where it is now. Yep.
Okay, and a little bit up is Brisbane.
Is Brisbane? Yep.
Okay, where are the forest fires compared to these two places?
They go from just below Brisbane,
Yeah, from here,
all the way down to Tasmania.
which is here, right?
Tasmania is the little island across the
Yeah.
down the
Okay.
bottom
Yeah.
that we like to forget about, and then they go all the way around to what we call the Great Australian Bight, which is where your mouse is about now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
We've also got some over in Western Australia as well, but
yeah, but look at the wind patterns, right? And why is this important? Well, I'll get to that in a moment. But for now, let's look at the wind patterns. The wind, if we're looking at where my cursor is now, this is one of the places where the fires are. The wind is,
Australia.
yeah, it's coming mostly from overland and going towards the sea.
Yep.
If we look at Tasmania, Tasmania is a bloody island in the middle of the sea, and it has hardly any air movement over it. That's not really true, because obviously it does have air movement, but not a lot. It's deflected away from Tasmania. It's deflected away from, well, the bottom part here, and it's.
Tasmania and Melbourne are known for being wetter and colder and whatnot than most of the rest of us.
Yeah. Well, because they're colder, they're also wetter, because the air that does get into this, the humidity that does get into the air coagulates faster, so it rains easier. I mean, the warmer the weather, the less rain you will have, even though you can have more humidity in the air. But you need a constant flow. Now, compared to the rest of Australia, obviously they are the wetter places.
Yep.
But they're still dry.
Oh yeah, everywhere's having.
And why is this? Well, if we look, for example, at where the wind, so the sea wind is hitting the coast of Australia the most, which is around Sydney towards Brisbane. I'm still correct on that, right?
Yep.
And I think this is why they call it Surfers Alley or something. Is that also in this area?
So you surfers what? Surfers. Oh yeah. Sorry, I'm not a big beach person. Sorry,
Yeah, me
I'm not
neither.
A big surfer, but yes, that's where the hot beaches are on that side of the country.
Now, and here's the funny thing: because the water in the Tasmanian Sea, and I showed that a moment ago, the water temperatures in the Tasmanian Sea is relatively low. It peaks at 18 degrees Celsius, which is not bad, don't get me wrong, but the amount of evaporation from the water is kind of based on the temperature. Now, it starts evaporating at 4 degrees. It kind of does evaporate a little bit below that, but it really starts evaporating at 4 degrees. Now, the warmer it gets, the more it evaporates. But it doesn't get much warmer. And if we then look at the wind patterns, which does blow the wind a little bit towards Sydney, then the main amount of water that does come from the Tasmanian Sea goes towards where the arrows hit the land. But if we look at the land, the wind doesn't really go deep inward.
Well, I can give you a bit of an explanation for that, a small part of the explanation, because as you know, landscape also influences these things. And there's actually a mountain range that goes a long way from the southern east coast up to quite far.
Indeed. Well, there you have it.
Great Dividing Range.
But that's stopping the water, the air the evaporated air, to get inland,
Yeah. Yep.
which prevents the rain and all that.
Yes. So
But
it was actually, I don't know if they still teach them, but in primary school you used to get taught that us poor folk living on the western side of the mountain range got less rain because we were on the western side of the mountain range. So
which is true. Simple as that.
So, the simplified water cycle that we used to get, it was sort of like it hits
Yeah.
here and then we miss out. So
No, but if we look, for example, in the middle, right? This is where the fires are. But most of the wind on the continent of Australia comes from the continent of Australia. So it's mostly dry wind.
yes, you do get a lot of dry wind, yes. And actually, I don't know, you're going to bring up the heating anomaly down in Antarctica at the moment?
Nope, not even going to do that because that's not really important. I know
It is
people.
actually, because it's actually contributing to the drying out of Australia.
Yeah.
Because it's pushing drier air than we would normally have up into that western side. So.
But that's because, well, cold air is drier. That is true. But it does pass. No, it doesn't. The main problem isn't that it passes a lot of water, whether water is cool or not. The main problem is that the wind that actually does reach the island is being diverted away from it. Most of the wind patterns we can see start overland and stay overland. And if we look at, I mean, there's a little bit here that seems to hit the coast, but as you said, it doesn't go really into the land.
No. The majority of it runs into the mountain and it gets stuck there.
Yeah, and that's the main problem. The thing is, a lot of people keep telling me, well, but science can't explain. But the thing is, science explained this already. This isn't news.
They're all carrying on about normally we have our big disasters in a big El Nino season which is the southern
Yeah. El Nino and El Nino are the two big ones, but
there's another one to the north that they completely forget about.
Yeah,
and it's actually active at the moment, whereas our southern one isn't. It's almost neutral, which you can sort of see there. It's
this one, right?
As you said, it's Well, that's the cyclone, but no. In the actual Northern Ocean, there's another. You can't really see it because this is the wind map, but it's a current more than a.
I'm sorry, I didn't put the currents up, but I know.
No, right. I forget what it's called. We hardly ever hear about the northern one. It gets dismissed all the time, but apparently it is also dragging the moisture that would normally fall, because we get our rainforests and everything are in the north, obviously, where it's nice and hot. And there is that moisture in the very, very top half of Australia. But at the moment, moisture is being dragged away from that by this northern system that is more active than usual, while our southern one is less active than usual.
Yeah.
So,
and the main problem is not that this happens, because it has been happening for as far back as we can remember.
Yeah.
The main problem is that now it's being politicized.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm 100% sorry for all the people that suffer to the forest fires that are now happening. Not that me being sorry for them or me feeling bad for them will do anything for them. I'm not that powerful. So the whole, showing a flag and thoughts and prayers and all that bullshit, that sounds nice, but it means jack all.
Yeah.
What I wanted to talk about today is John linked me a video of an Australian YouTuber. I forgot her name now. I'll see if I can find it real fast.
Joe Nova. Have you read anything from Joe Nova? She's awesome.
I can't remember. Terrible with names, my friend. I really am. Come on. No, this is Daisy Cousins.
Daisy Cousins, yep.
And I watched her video, and she made a few very good points, because obviously it's being politicized by both the extreme left and the extreme right.
Yeah.
But there is a Goldilocks zone in it. And as she herself in her latest video, or at least the video I saw about the Australian bushfire she made, talks about how 13% is clearly caused by men, but then there's another large aspect of people probably being the cause as well. And this is why I came to the title of this stream. Australian fires are 50% man-made. I actually read an article, and I can't... I'm sorry, I have to close this away again, sorry. Broadcasting that, silly me. I can't find the article now, but I have read it, and I will see if I can find it again and probably put it in one of my videos later, where the police, the constables in Australia actually say, well, we're going to say about 50% is caused by men. And I know that when people think about, well, someone caused it, they did it on purpose, that's not what they say.
No. Although this is where some of us have a bit of contention. We don't deny that some of them are accidental, but this is Australia. There's certain times a year you do not throw a cigarette butt out the window. You do not drop a match. You do not light your barbecue. Yeah. You just don't. And if you do, you're a fucking idiot and you're a negligent arsonist as far as a lot of us are concerned. They may not call it that, but that's how we see it and feel it because that's how we've grown up.
And this is what the police officer said as well. I mean, it might not be criminal, but at least it's neglect.
Yeah.
Which I think is criminal as well, but I'm not an Australian. We see
it as the same neglect as leaving someone's toddler next to the pool without a fence. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. You just pay attention to what the fuck you're doing.
You just don't do it. Yeah.
And I've got an article about Michael. What's his name? I don't have it ready here. Michael something. I didn't want to use his name in one of my videos because I didn't want to give him notoriety. But people are threatening his life because he actually lit fires. Now I'm not sure if he lit fires or is responsible for fires being lit. But people are especially upset with him because it happened slightly after a moment where 3 people died because of the forest fires. So yeah, if by then you're still not safe.
We got the same thing here. There's a young guy, 20-year-old, decided to light some grass fires in the middle of Canberra's called the bush capital, in case you didn't know. We've got we used to have a lot more, but we've got great tracts of actual bush all the way through the city. And this guy decided to go and light half a dozen grass fires. So people, and they made the mistake of putting the guy's name out. People went straight to his Facebook and they're like, you're a dog. You're this, you're that. You know, they were very, very angry, and rightly so. It was only 20 years ago, or not 15 years ago, that over 100 houses were lost in Canberra because of bushfire.
Yeah.
So, it's very personal to us, people setting fires. It feels like an attack. It just does.
But that's the worst part. It happens so much, and it's being downplayed. And I know that this is what Daisy... I forgot her name again. Daisy something.
Daisy Cousins. Yeah.
Thank you.
She's very popular. She actually goes on Sky News regularly. Traditional conservative woman.
Yeah, I like her work. What I'm saying here is not to attack her. If people feel that way, then you know what? I'm not going to apologize to you for attacking someone I'm not attacking. If she feels offended, I'm more than willing to take my time to talk to her. I don't think she cares about me, though. I'm not big enough. All those things...
She takes criticism fairly well.
Oh, I enjoy her work. I really do. So this is why I'm subscribed to her, and I'm not Australian. Let's put it like that. No, but the point I was wanting to make is she kind of points out, well, the left is extreme in one point and the rights are extreme in the other point. And I'm like, you're correct. But if I look at just the wind patterns, that explains so much. And if we then also put out that the Tasmanian Sea is, this is where my mouse is roughly now, is pretty cold compared to all the other water around the United States, I wanted to say. Around all the water around Australia, the Tasmanian Sea is pretty cold. So the only place where the wind is actually slightly turned towards Australia and that's before it gets deflected by the mountain range. The only place where that happens, the water is cold, so it doesn't pick up a lot of moist.
Yep. Yep.
But if we look
Yeah,
at
we can't afford to waste water in this country because we need to utilize what we get.
yeah,
Which is why the water management thing, the protest I went to the other month about the Murray-Darling, there's a lot more than that going on.
yeah.
That's why those things are such an issue. And we've had decades for a couple of different things: the water mismanagement, the national. I'm sure your countries are probably going through the same thing where they're locking up more and more land,
Well,
calling it national park.
wait. I'll show you my country. This is
You're only tiny though.
well, yeah, that is true. Now I'm here where my mouse pointer is, roughly. This is the Netherlands, and you can see that at this point in time the wind is blowing quite strongly past the coast. At this point in time, we've got not that wet a wind, but usually it goes something like from here overland to there. But even this, I mean, we've got a small coastline. Actually, our country is small, so that helps. But you can see that there's strong winds, so it moves the air around a lot. But we have a sea climate, so the water isn't as cool. I mean, the water around the Netherlands is only a few degrees cooler than the Tasmanian Sea at this point in time, which doesn't sound like a big deal. But considering that air humidity is based on water temperature as well, but also on wind temperatures, the warmer the air is, the more water vapor it can take. The more water vapor the wind can take, the more water vapor the ocean puts out. So if you have fast-moving wind, then the chances of it taking up more water is bigger.
Yeah, it takes longer to reach that saturation point.
Yeah. But at the same time, because Europe is Europe, we don't have the extreme heats as much as Australia has, so we don't have the drying effect. Now, on this wind map, it's not that clear because the wind still blows pretty much past the coast. But there are times when it's really, really going from where my mouse is now towards where my mouse is now.
Yep.
It does also happen that we have winds coming from here towards Europe, which are usually very dry winds. It doesn't happen a lot.
Yeah, like you had dust from the Sahara heading up round that way.
Yeah. We had that too. That's from here. So land winds are drier than sea winds. We have a lot of sea wind. But if we look at Australia, and I have to go back to Australia again, I'm trying to put both Australia and Tasmania and New Zealand in there. If we see Australia, even though it's an island, it has very little sea wind.
Yeah.
Most of the wind on the continent of Australia. Now, Australia is obviously a lot bigger than Europe, don't get me wrong. But most of the wind is inland wind, staying inland.
Yeah.
And it kind of seems to push the on the edges. This is the only place where, at the moment, there's a hurricane going on, it seems. Is there a hurricane?
The top half of Australia is where all the wet, swampy bits are, where we get our crocodiles and things like that. So on both sides, you'll get cyclones at about that level.
Okay.
Kind of thing.
But if this is mostly dry land, right? I'm not mistaken.
The middle's the desert. I can't remember the percentage, but it's something like 60%. I don't know if one of the guys in the thing is considered desert. Of Australia is considered desert.
Well, I've always known it as desert, so I'm going to take your word for it, and I'm going to second that. But if we look at this, and I simply cannot understand why people are so blind to it. Now, the environment isn't something based on one or two things.
No.
But certain things have such a high impact because, there is a possibility that in this place it can rain too. I'm going to say...
And it gets the most beautiful wildflowers in our deserts and things when it does get the rains through. It's stunning.
But it doesn't happen often.
No.
And I can still remember a few years ago when there were also, I think, 2015, there were forest fires as well in Australia because it happens a lot. And people were talking about, well, but it's going to be years before we really get rain. And a year later, they had a problem because the land was so wet.
Yep.
Because there was so much rainfall. And I'm like, see, in the Netherlands, we've always had to live with the water. I mean, there are historians who basically say the Netherlands are the only country in the world that can claim that the people of the Netherlands made the Netherlands. We literally dug it out of the sea. Which is true.
Yeah, that's right, you've got all the dikes and things.
Indeed, it's true. But because of that, we learned to deal with water. And it's silly because our queen, we don't have, well, we do have a queen now, but our ruler was a queen. Now the ruler is a king again. Our queen, so the mother of the current king, once was told that work was needed. I'm thinking about, was it the mother or was it the grandmother? Anyway, doesn't really matter. One of the queens was told that the dikes needed work, but they didn't know how important it was. So they had calculations done and they said, well, the way it's looking now, we might have an overflow, a flood every 200 years. So I don't know how big of a problem that is. We don't know how big of a problem that is. Do we need to do something about that? And the Queen said quite simply, well, if there's a chance of a flow, of a flood every 200 years, that can be today and tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So I would say we still need to do something about that. And this is why we now have an intricate system of dikes and waterways and all that blah blah blah. This is also why Dutch water workers are internationally very sought after. But if I then look at Australia needs water workers too. Now the reason might be opposite, because they don't have enough water, it might seem. But the fact that Australia is dry at some times and flooding at other times means that they have a water management problem.
Yeah, there's actually that's been a big discussion for 100 years, easily. There's a thing called the Bradford scheme they've wanted to build. A lot of Australia's water, people probably don't realise this, falls on the top half of Australia and it comes down through the floodplains and things right down to the bottom of Australia.
Yeah.
That's just how it works. And at the moment, we say we need water workers. Unfortunately, the water workers we've got haven't been on our side, they've been on corporations' side. So we've got these places with huge dams that right now, right in the middle of this period where you're seeing us, dry as and screaming for water, we have properties up north growing cotton. Cotton is a really water intense.
Yes. It's amazing.
Then they have enormous private dams, and the river system, one of the river systems below was literally drained dry, and then they flooded it, and then they've drained it again. And it literally killed an entire ecosystem of an entire river system because of their... Yeah. And then we go to South Australia, and they're growing almonds down there.
Which
again,
is also
very water intense. Now, we used to have rice crops down in the bottom half of Australia on the east coast side, but it was sort of in an area where there was a lot of water. Those farmers did use more water than they should have, and it did impact South Australia. But when they decided to fix that, that was when they decided we now had to buy water, and all of a sudden all the water got sold to private companies. And we've also got all that bottled water from Australia is being sucked straight out of our artesian system. And
Brilliant.
so we're starting to have issues with that. So, yeah.
And if I'm going to be blunt, if we look at what's happening in Australia now, it's not unlike what's happening in California.
Yeah.
It's failed politics, eco-terrorism, and ignorance.
Yep. And then they write it into law, and then they say they can't change it, which is where these protests are coming out, and where these farmer suicides are coming because they can't afford to buy water anymore.
Yeah.
So.
And I'm going to go to another place. Okay, so this is Australia. Let's go to Africa. Okay, South Africa. Here we see basically the same pattern. It's not as bad as it is in Australia, but we see the winds hitting the coast but not going inland, right? Now here we see the wind going inland a little bit. Africa is a lot greener than... South Africa is a lot greener than Australia, by the way. I'm not even making this up. It's far greener than Australia.
Yeah.
And the Africa was the Kaap de Goede Hoop areas. They were colonized by the Dutch. No one else was living there when the Dutch came there. Now it's one of the most sought after places on the continent. Fair enough. Even though they have a lot of sea wind, comparatively a lot of sea wind going in, they still desalinate their water. Because let's be honest, they need a lot of water. And they have a far smaller coastline than...
than we do.
So I'm not sure what's happening, but we have the technology. I know it's a cliche to bring out an old television show, but we have the technology. We can make him better.
Well, with desalination plants, that's something that have been on and off the books here for as long as I've been alive.
I know.
Yet, where at the moment, they're talking about recycling Sydney's sewage water and things like that.
Well, nothing wrong with that. I mean, the funny thing is,
treat it properly.
If you treat it properly, and it depends on what you want to use it for. Sewage water, if treated, you don't have to treat it that much, would be very useful, for example, to use as for crops. What do you call that? Watering the crops. Bloody hell, my English isn't perfect tonight. I'm sorry. But sure, you can do that. I mean, pee and poo is pretty good for plants. Who'd have thunk?
Yes, they do it to some of it, and they do bioswale as well here. This is why I'm a bit wary of it. When they were first working on bioswale and redoing the water, the EPA didn't have enough checks in place, and there was a property that my father was actually working on, and as part, how I said I did horticulture, I did one of my assessments. I went and tested all the water and soil out there, and it was chock-a-block full of fecal matter and things. And they'd spread this stuff for. Gosh,
but I think
it was a crust across the landscape.
Disgusting. Then you're using it a little bit too much.
Properly. Yeah, it wasn't treated properly.
Yeah,
it wasn't.
And
properly.
I think poo in itself isn't that big of a problem. Pee is a little bit because of the ammonia and all that. Even though you need that too, so you don't want to take it all out.
All out. No, that's right. Yeah.
But I mean, in Europe, we use manure, which basically is an expensive word for poo and pee.
Yes.
Yeah, I always like it when people use expensive words for things. I like to smoke myself a good cigar from time to time. I especially love Maduro cigars. Bear with me, I'm going somewhere with this story. A Maduro cigar is darkly colored because the leaves are fermented. Fermented is an expensive word for rotted.
Yeah.
And they're pretty good, don't get me wrong, but if you're so going to say, oh well, so you're smoking a cigar made of rotten tobacco, then you'd be correct. And so this is true for fecal matter as well. It's usable.
Yes. Well, most things are. I recycle everything in my yard, so I get lots of chook poo and stuff in mine.
I have to put Ludicrous out there. Ludicrous, mate. Fuck you. Australia has Kylie manure. I'm not. Sorry. I'm a tickler for wordplays.
That's a good one, actually. Yes. She's not Australian anymore, anyway. She hasn't been here for years. She's been living over in the UK. So.
Well, yeah. She got a fame there, didn't she?
Yeah, because everyone who's in Neighbours is famous in the UK. They have a thing for our soaps. I don't know why. I've never watched them, really. I wasn't one of those teenagers. But anyway, yeah, so the bushfire thing, I don't know. It's not just the wind and the rain, though. As I said, because they've locked up all this land for a very long time. And if you look at all the bushfire inquiries going back over 2 decades, they've been talking about, and we're talking millions of hectares locked up to be
Yeah,
national park.
yeah.
And
And
every bushfire, they've been saying the fuel loads are getting too big.
yeah,
Which it's saying, I think if it gets over 4 ton of ground litter per hectare, that's considered dangerous.
yeah. And
And
this
we've
is
got that everywhere.
this is another
And
thing
it's
I don't understand.
dry.
And this is another thing that I don't understand. Whether it's dry or not doesn't really make that much of a difference. And I know people won't like it when I say that, but trust me, being dry or not isn't the be all
No,
and
one-
end all. I've seen,
no, the
I've
fuel
seen.
load is
Well, the fuel load is the biggest problem. I've seen hay fires happen in a bale of hay that was soaking
Yeah.
wet.
yes, no, haystack fires are something rural people are very familiar with, even here.
Yeah,
They happen,
Yeah.
all the time.
So and
But environmentalists are actually using that to say that our environment is just spontaneously combusting.
well, no, because hay fires happen in Europe too. But
And
this,
it's a very specific thing, though. There's a certain amount of moisture to help that heat build up
Yeah.
in the first place for those
Yeah.
fires to happen, which
Yeah.
we don't have in our environment at the moment.
which is a good thing for Australia, I guess. Well, maybe.
Well, yeah, I suppose it's good that we don't have little collections of this stuff in the bottom of gullies that's still wet. Yes.
But if we look at, for example, the fuel management thingy, this is not new either. In Europe, they've been doing
No.
that for more than 2,000 years.
Yep. And it's been completely recognised. Even some of the climate people have brought up we need to backburn like we were and like the Aboriginals were, because Australia is actually in an unnatural environment. For tens of thousands of years, the Aboriginals went around burning everywhere they went.
Yeah, they
So
basically destroyed.
Australia adapted to man, not the other way around.
Yeah, because the Aboriginals basically destroyed most of the vegetation.
They first of all they used it for hunting, and then they this is from elders that have said this. First of all, they used it for hunting, or maybe for war. If there's a bigger tribe chasing you, you set a fire, and then you can get away. But then they realised that when everything grew back, it was leaving like these big open pasture areas where the kangaroos and things would congregate, which made hunting easier.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And so they fuck up their society. The thing is, the path to hell is paved with good intentions. So yeah, they did it for the right reasons, considering that they didn't think any further. And I'm not even blaming them for it either, don't get me wrong.
the problem is we stopped treating the land the way it had gotten used to being treated.
Yeah,
So yeah.
because it's basically a bad way. Though, and this is something John pointed out earlier in one of my other streams, in our other streams, I should say. Some trees actually, how do you call it, germinate?
Oh yeah, a lot of our bush needs the fire to
Yeah.
regenerate.
So they need the fire, and here we are trying to stop it from happening. Well,
And it's not just regeneration. It's there's some plants that will sort of take over and start choking out the bush
yeah.
if they're not regularly removed, which the fire does. So
And this is another point. I mean, okay, so there are backfires. Yeah, you can do that to remove fuel from.
backburning and clearing, yeah.
Yeah. Well, backburning is only one way because, as you said, clearing.
Yep.
Clearing does a lot of work as well.
Yes.
But
Yes,
even that has been contested in the last few years in Australia, if I'm not mistaken.
more than a few. We have these things called local councils. If you want to make a fire break around your house or on your fence line, you have to make an application to your local council. You pay for that. And then they send you a big list of criteria you have to meet. And you have to go and count every single tree in that zone. You have to properly identify every tree. You have to identify species in that area. And you have to number all the trees and stuff. And then you give it back to them and they have a look and decide whether or not they might let you make a fire break. And all of this takes time, as you can imagine.
Yeah, it's kind of like what happens in California, where people weren't allowed to clear the underbrush. Literally weren't allowed to clear the
No.
underbrush. Not
And
even.
they use satellites to go and find people for it. So,
Yes, and find them. And how
Yeah.
dare you? I'm not.
yeah,
We've been doing it for 2,000 years, at least,
Yeah.
probably even longer. In Europe, we have villages which are completely in forests. How did they
Yeah.
survive? By cleaning the underbrush, because a tree doesn't burn easily.
yeah, we used and similar thing here. We have the little villages in amongst the forests, and they used to have just wider clearing on the sides of the roads and
Oh yeah,
around the buildings and things. So you actually had a chance to fight any embers that were jumping and
yeah.
to try and stop that fire line from moving forward.
Now I'm
It
going
may
to
have jumped anyway, but
now I'm going to be really nasty, and I'm going to ask you to entertain the good people for a moment because I need a fast bio break. I'm sorry. I'll be right back.
Well, I don't know what I can tell them about, but okay, no worries. Let me see. Well, everyone in Australia at the moment should have a bushfire plan. There you go. That's what I can tell you. And Canberra so far, we've been pretty lucky. I might show you. My screen. Why not? Where's that in the settings button? Isn't it? No. Share screen. Here we go. Oh, I should have it in a separate window. So anyway, this is on a site called for the Rural Fire Service. It's the Fires Near Me. So it's a live interactive map of what is going on in New South Wales, and they include us in Canberra because we're pretty little. Can you see my mouse? I don't think you can you? No, you can't. That's all right. Okay, so as you can see, all of these are just watching, just alerts to say there's fires going on. Each one has a bit of information. This one's 331,000 hectares just off to the east of Canberra. It's actually not as far as you might think. And it's out of control at the moment. It was actually yellow. It must have been threatening one of the little villages out that way. Canberrans are a bit concerned, all the people I know are a bit concerned about this fire. You can see it's popped up there, Mary's Hill. You should be able to see that, I think. Oh, isn't it sharing my screen?
Oh, wait a second. I didn't know you wanted to share your screen. I'm back, by the way, but I'll
Oh.
share your screen.
No, that's all right.
It's
I
not
was
sharing
just
it. Yeah, you're not. Oh, bloody hell. Misclicking. It's not sharing your screen, though. Do you want me to stop sharing mine? Or you can send me the link and I'll just... Oh, no, wait a second, because you wanted to do more than just share it. You wanted to point stuff out.
It's all right. I was just showing them the Fires Near Me map, but apparently I've been rabbiting.
Yeah, but you're not showing anything.
No, I don't know why.
There it is. Okay. I'll move this here. And like that. And like that. Okay, this should be it.
So this is the Fires Near Me map.
Okay.
And what you're seeing in the middle, you're actually not seeing all of... Make it go out. Come on.
Yeah, because there are images going on that how do you call it? Show that nearly all of Australia is burning, where it's mostly on one coast.
It is, yeah, and you can see a lot of them. This map doesn't show the fires down around Victoria and whatnot. It only shows New South Wales.
Okay.
Okay, so at the top is actually the Queensland border of that fire range, and down the bottom is the Victorian border.
Okay.
And that is New South Wales. Now, where I live, we'll zoom in.
Canberra.
So if anything happens, I plan to go north at this particular point in time.
Considering, yes.
But we have one little fire, this Namadgi National Park. We have one fire there that's out of control at the moment. And there was another one, and it'll probably pop up again later because it's been blowing in and out. There's another national park, the Brindabella National Park to the north, which is closer to where I live. Both of those are in the same state as all the other national parks, which is why we're ready to evacuate too if necessary, because if it takes hold, it will rocket through like it has everywhere else. So.
Yeah. But how is Australia for how do you call those planes? Water planes. I forgot the name. But those things that basically drop water.
We have a few, and we have helicopters and things that can do the same sort of thing. But we borrow them from the northern hemisphere. Quite most bushfire seasons, we borrow extras because they're so expensive. So, but we do have some. But the fires are burning that hot that we don't. You can't just dump water on these fires and expect them to go out.
No. You need a
Too
lot of
much
water.
energy in them. Yeah.
You need,
So
I mean,
really,
this is the thing. This is something I discussed with someone not too long ago. People misunderstand forest fires. Underbrush doesn't burn that hot. Funny enough, but it needs to burn at roughly 800 degrees for a tree to catch fire. Oh, you're done sharing?
yes.
Okay. So underbrush needs about 800 degrees to. Come on. There you go. Come on. I so dislike Windows from time to time. Back to the wind patterns. Anyway, underbrush needs the burn of an underbrush needs to reach about 800 degrees for the tree to start catching fire. 800 degrees Celsius, by the way. Once the tree catches fire, well, obviously it starts with the branches and the leaves and all that. If there are enough trees close by, then it will reach temperatures of 1600 degrees easily, which will easily set on other trees on fire as well.
Yeah.
All of this can be prevented by clearing the underbrush.
Certainly can.
Because if the underbrush fires don't get hot enough, the trees won't catch fire. But yeah, there is that.
So they're burning because there's so much fuel. They're not burning through. They're actually sitting in one spot and burning. So they're getting really hot patches in the ground now that are staying there for ages. And part of the problem is the fire runs through at the lower level and it cooks the leaves on the trees.
Yeah.
And then a few days later, all those leaves fall on the ground again.
And then
even if they've put the surface fire out, some of the ground is hot enough that it will spark it up, and they're running through the same areas again. So
that's why you need a lot of water. And the worst part is you can't even go to, for example, seawater, because then you will salinate the ground, which will kill everything.
A lot of people don't seem to get that, but anyway. A lot of people saying, why don't they just use the water out of the ocean? It's like, oh, really?
Yeah, well, they could if they desalinate it first, but I have to admit, though, that I am somewhat surprised that Australia doesn't desalinate more. I mean, the same is true for continents, not continents. California, for example, they've been having water problems for the longest time. I think it might have something to do with selling their groundwater to Nestle.
Literally, they are desiccating the land in these areas.
Yes.
They've been sucking the water out of it for years. We've had the fuel build up, and now we've had a spark. It's like as I said, it's like the perfect storm. We've got these weather systems that are dragging moisture off the country, as well as the mismanagement.
And I can't believe that it's the environmental terrorists that are actually advocating for this, because that's what they're doing. If we look at people like Extinction Rebellion, for example, they are advocating about, well, we're doing everything wrong. Yeah, okay. Who needs to change? Well, not companies like Nestle. You and me need to change. We're not the problem.
Yes.
But you can't say that.
No,
anyway.
No, that makes you right-wing denier.
Yes, climate change denier. Thing is, I know I'm a climate change denier, which is not true, because I totally acknowledge the fact that climate is constantly changing. That's why we call it climate. Yeah. I deny the fact that it's man-made. But if we look at the problems Australia is having now, or the problems California had,
they are man-made.
There is a huge influence of man-made. And in Australian fires, hell, they actually lit the bloody crap. Not all of it. Not all of it. I know.
Quite a bit. And this is and they're all going, oh, it's not it. We aren't doing it. And it's like, yeah, but you're the ones who've been screaming that we need to disrupt business as usual. We need to tear down the system. We've regularly got them burning flags and saying Australia needs to burn to the ground.
Yeah.
This is a hell of a disruption of business as usual.
And the worst part
some
is
of these juveniles, as far as I believe, have to be suffering eco-anxiety.
obviously.
And they've decided to push the issue, make the issue, bring it to a head. It's not their fault the fires spread. If it wasn't for climate change, the fires wouldn't spread so bad.
Yes.
This is the logic they use.
Yes. And it's like, okay, but listen, as I said, 2,000 years ago in Europe, and Europe is a lot wetter than Australia, they already recognized the need to keep your forests clean. And I like it when, for example, people are talking about how they've got ancient woods in for example, the UK or the Netherlands. And I'm like, yeah, we don't. Man has been cultivating the woods for as far back as we lived close to them. Because we had to.
It's sort of part of legend, isn't it? You know, the people getting in trouble for poaching or taking firewood off the boss's land and things like that. That's
mostly the story, true. But people had to do that. You did that because you had to make sure that you didn't take everything, but you took a lot.
Yeah.
Because the more, I mean, people sometimes show images of what they think an ancient forest would be like, and you see a lot of ferns and underbrush and trees, hardly any place to walk. And I would tell you, go to any forest other than the rainforest. Go to any forest in Europe. See if you can find that. I'll basically say you can't. And there's a reason you can't. Because we prevent that from happening. Because we have to. Because it doesn't have to be dry for years on end for forest fires to happen. Hell, we even have forest fires in Europe.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things my responses to one of the people speaking at the climate thing the other day is these fires could have been happening in the middle of winter. Yeah. The temperature has nothing to do with it. And even some moisture, as you said, at this point, with the amount of fuel that's there, once it caught, we'd be in the exact same boat. It may have taken them longer with their lighter to get the grass to light.
Well, that's the thing. And once it starts and it goes. You can burn wet wood. Now, wood is a terrible thing to burn, by the way. It's very difficult to get wood to burn. But bark, on the other hand, that's pretty easy. Grass, that's pretty easy. Twigs, yeah, sure, not a problem there. So what do? We clear the... back in the day, when I used to work in a chemical plant, and I was administrative, don't worry. They didn't let me do anything dangerous. But one of the first things we all had to learn was the fire triangle.
Yep.
What does fire need? Fuel, oxygen, heat.
Yep.
How much of it? Enough. That's all. Enough. If you can get one of them below the enough particle, there's no fire. And what's enough? Well, once it starts burning, you'll know. And I can't for that. I've been talking about California a little bit too. Let's bring up California, because if we look at the water and wind patterns there.
Well, Renovado just brought up. Is my mic on? Yeah. Renovado just brought up an interesting point with California. They're sort of one step ahead of us with the water controls almost, because I know some of they've got pretty full-on water restrictions there as well.
Yeah.
And they're being fined for having a bath and washing their clothes in the same day.
Yeah, and they still use, as you said, lots of water for avocados. I think it was, what's the berry called? It's those berries that float in the water.
All the rich people can buy water to keep their properties green and their gardens green. This is the problem with a.
And again, I mean, this is the one thing I don't understand. I mean, how can Texas manage, where it's pretty much landlocked, but California can't, where it's a sea-based coast?
Yeah.
We know salination techniques. I mean, we've had them for hundreds of years. Even if we would do it in the same way the Dutch did it 400 years ago.
We just need to break some of the private dams up north and we'll be fine.
Well, yeah. We need to develop still suits and water catchment caves. We're not on the tune just yet.
Took me a second to figure that out. I always wondered about those still suits. They always seem to be. They get pretty funky, I reckon.
Dunes life matter. Oh man, Ludicrous, you always crack me up, man. You really do. Oh, by the way, I know I'm talking to the choir, but everyone should subscribe to him. I mean, it's his work is really funny, and I'm not kidding. I'm not funny. He is.
Yes, he is very amusing.
So, but
Very
I mean, if we look at, I think this is the coastline of California right here. I'm not that great at topography, but again, we see that the winds are blowing past the coast, but not really inward. And I think California has the same problem with higher elevated lands, slightly land inwards. But you have so much coastline. There is so much desalination that can be done. Now, I'm not a great fan of desalination because, well, the more you desalinate, the more salty the seawater will get eventually. But at the same time, come on. It's already too salt for most of the livestock.
Yeah. Yes, very true.
And I mean, I really have a problem with our ecological betters because they basically lie.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Lie for their own advantage or for their friend's advantage or somebody's advantage.
most of them are useful idiots. Most of them simply do not know. Most of the kids out there and some of the adults out there, they simply do not know.
Mm.
And it's
Individual avocado takes 6 times the water to produce compared to similar mass harvest fruits. Yeah, that's something you're probably already in here, Renovado, but we've got going on here. We've got crops that really should not be grown in Australia or should have a very, very limited space for that. And this is the wrong season to be growing cotton and almonds. Like, it's just...
yes. Yeah, because it's now summer in Australia. This is something that people in Europe will have a problem understanding, but it's summer in Australia.
Yep.
Well, which makes sense considering that it's the counter continent and all that. I do love Larry Pratchett. Sorry, guys.
Yes.
It's not a negative thing.
No, it's a positive. We're the best. We're just, on top of the world. You guys just don't realise it.
That's one way of looking at it, yeah. Oh, there was someone, not too long ago, I saw someone talking about how racist topography was.
Oh, really?
Because it puts, because it puts Europe at the top and everything else at the bottom. And I'm like,
for real?
Okay. Yeah,
Wow.
for real.
Okay.
And I'm like, but isn't our planet, aren't we looking at a planet based on the solar system?
You'd think so.
And I mean, the planet is turning in a certain direction, and somehow we all consider right-wing positive and left-wing negative. Why, I don't know, but this has more or less become the norm.
Yeah. Yeah, very true, and all sorts of things.
So if the planet is turning in one direction, then you would say, yeah, well, then you should turn the planet over. But the planet, funny enough, is turning in the other direction. Even though we say right-wing positive, left-wing negative, the planet is turning towards its left, if I'm not mistaken. I'm really not good at this.
Yeah, so my child has just come out. I'll be back in about 2 minutes.
Sure. So yeah, there is that. Anyone still have anything interesting to say? Because I have the feeling that I am repeating myself. And I'd like to point out that it's anti-salt mining. Don't be an SJW, Ludicrous. I'm sorry, couldn't help myself. So, but yeah, there is this interesting thing, and we look at the wind patterns, and obviously wind patterns aren't everything. I know the water temperatures around the island mean a lot too, and I like it because if you look at watercolor maps, half of the sea is red, which then gives you the idea it's really hot, but it's just about 21 degrees, which is still warm, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, well, wind patterns are really important, and it's just they're just, unless it's an extreme weather event, they completely ignore those things. You know, and the cycle of the climate, the weather that it already has, which isn't set in stone. It's like their argument is that basically humans industrialized and Mother Earth said, right, I'm not going to change anything for your convenience. You look after it from here on out, and that's just. We don't have that much power.
Well, that's the whole thing, though, and this is the one thing that I find funny, because if we look at environmentalists, the one thing they all have in common, and I'm not talking about how they're all communists and socialists and blah blah blah, the one thing they all have in common is that they really overestimate the power we have as humans on this planet. Yes, we are
overestimate the power of the people at the top of the oppressing
no
hierarchy.
All humans. The fact that they think that we're currently at 7 billion. Well, let's say 10 billion. We're not going to reach 10 billion, but let's say 10 billion. The idea that 10 billion humans can have such a huge impact on a planet size, the Earth, is it's almost
laughable.
It's almost as if they like to think that we are the new gods. And some of the gods are more powerful than the other gods, obviously, but we are the new gods. Look at the power we exert over our planet. Now, we can fuck things up for us, that's definitely true. But we have no influence whatsoever on the planet.
Yeah, actually, the whole man is God thing, I think that's a lot of people seem to have lost their actual innate respect for nature, you know, that thing we're meant to be connected to.
Yeah.
And it's a bit like the crazy Extinction Rebellion people here who are going around putting water on top of mountains and hills and things where there isn't usually water, saying they're helping the wildlife. And it's like, no, you're messing with the natural system.
Yeah, you're
there
not
are places
helping anyone.
they're meant to go for water. There's places they're meant to move to as the water and the food runs out, and you're stopping that. You're keeping them in near the cities so they can get run over by cars.
Yeah. And Johnny, 10 billion is just a way over the top estimate, because I think we're closer to almost 8 billion now. But they kind of estimate that the world will top out at 9.6 billion people. Maybe, we don't know. But yeah, we don't have 10 billion people. But even if we did, and the UN wants everyone to live in cities. Yeah, brilliant how that goes.
And actually, that's a good point, John. With the temperatures that they're putting out at the moment, is you've got this, what's it called, the urban sink effect or something that?
Heat sink. Yeah, urban heat sink.
None of that is being taken into consideration yet. Here in Australia, they're saying that records that go back forever that were done with, you know, the old mercury thermometers and things, they know exactly how they are inaccurate.
Yeah.
Or they're taking into account the environment it was measured in. Where's this adjustment? Yeah, we don't get it. We just get, you know, at the airport it was 48 degrees today, and it's like, well, yeah, look at all that concrete and look at all those airplanes.
Maybe that has something to do with very little shades on airports, by the way. What with all the planes having to land somewhere. I know it's silly of them, but
I wish I had a digital thermometer with me the other day at that rally, because no joke, it was easily 10 to 15 degrees hotter near that truck and in amongst that crowd than it was 30 meters away from them.
I'm 100% sure.
Really oppressive.
I'm 100% sure that this would be the case. And you can't mention it because it goes counter to their narrative. I mean, they want people to live in conglomerations, so to speak. Everyone in one small place. But this is a heat sink.
I mean, have you ever gone and stood near an air conditioner in one of those, the actual air conditioning machinery or the heating equipment or the refrigeration equipment?
Everything. Hell,
all of that
even
stuff
even
gets
the houses
ridiculously hot.
even the houses themselves, even if you don't do any heating in a concrete or stone building, it's a heat
Still
sink.
going to, yeah. So
It's more of a heat sink than CO2 is. Maybe not more than water vapor, but definitely more than CO2.
and I do think some of it's deliberate, but some of it's just ignorant. No, not ignorance necessarily. Just
No,
complacency.
I think most of the environmental activists and most of the people who believe the nonsense, I don't think, I think they're ignorant. I don't think they're, how do you call it? I don't think they're
there
malign.
There are some people who are in positions of power who have helped to mismanage things quite deliberately for advantage, be it political or financial or whatever.
Well, this is what we saw in California, and I am thinking this is what we're seeing in this is what we're seeing in Australia as well. And I like the fact that they blame the Prime Minister, which makes no sense because every part of the country has to do its own job, right?
Yeah, and he only became Prime Minister in May, so I'm not really sure what he is supposed to have done.
I like the fact that.
And
oh, sorry, go on.
yeah, no, that's right. The federal government can't actually act without the state's permission in the states. That's how Australia was set up. The states, in many ways, have more power than the Commonwealth.
Yeah.
So if the states say, we don't want your help, then, or if they don't ask for help, or if it's offered and they don't take it up, the Commonwealth can't just, the federal government can't just, can't just walk in and say, right, we're taking over here. And it just doesn't work that way. So
yeah, and it's something that I really fail to understand, because this is true in Australia, this is true in California. I know the term California isn't mine, but I'm going to use it now because it makes sense. If we look at just how most of the green activists, and I'm going to say most, but it's probably more than just most, are watermelons.
Yes.
Green on the outside, but deep red within.
Watermelons are taking huge advantage of the heightened emotions of the bushfires.
Yeah.
And the media, I've had people who are in some of these mega bushfire zones who said that the media and things have been making it worse because things aren't as well. Obviously, if your house is about to burn down, things are pretty desperate and the fight's on. But the media is making it sound like these people have been in imminent danger and people's families are freaking out. So they're spending as much time calming their families down as they are preparing for the bushfire.
Yeah. So. This is funny because when I started on YouTube a few years ago, there was this female YouTuber in Denmark who was really afraid to go out at night because she was afraid of being raped. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to downplay rape or anything like that. But the reason she was afraid was because people keep telling her that so many people get raped, which wasn't true. It has gone up a little bit in Denmark, but that has something to do with the movement of certain people, which I'm not going to go into now. But
the food's excellent, isn't it, Modwayne?
The food is great. Yeah, that's the one thing that we... and obviously, if you're not from a certain culture, you don't know how to make that food. Something like that. No, but yeah, I've got a video coming out on that topic, not too far from now as well. It's amazing that we can, and we know this, we can talk people into being scared. We can talk 100%. Societies into, how do you call that? The thingy where banks are failing and people are scared for their money and money is being destroyed. Depressions, that's the one. We can talk people into depressions. We can talk people into being scared. And that's what they're doing. That's all they're doing. And they're lying.
Actually, it's the guy with the sandwich board. The end is nigh and people are Must be a good talker because they're all believing him at the moment.
Yeah. Well, why is the end nigh then? I mean, let's be honest. The world has never been greener for the last 250 to 400 years.
Yeah, so they don't want to. That doesn't fit the narrative. You're not allowed to say that.
No, that's
We're
true.
in drought. It's what do you mean the Earth's getting greener? We're in a worst drought of in our history.
I mean, don't get me wrong. The current fires in Australia are terrible. They are.
Oh yeah, they are.
They're
Yes.
not the worst.
No,
even-
and they didn't need to. And they didn't need to be this bad either.
Yeah,
So
and it could
there
have been
is that as well.
prevented. Well, not
Yep,
prevent
yep.
perhaps, but it could have been.
And half of them didn't need to happen.
Yeah.
You know, if parents were watching their kids, they wouldn't have been out setting fire to the park, would they?
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Makes sense. I'm still behind you on that one. So, we're talking about this as being this major thing to prove climate change and blah blah blah, but even in the last 50 years, you guys had worse fires than this.
Yep. This one is now, I think, burnt out more land, but all up. But yeah, we've had fires that have done a lot more damage, killed a lot of people. And as I said, if those fires had had the fuel mismanagement that we've seen now after 20, 30, 40 years, and because literally this has started way back in the 70s, they started this.
Yeah.
You know, so there's been a long time for this to just slowly get worse and worse and worse. I mean,
Well-
to the point where there's one forest, greenies had put spikes in the ground to get the wheels of anyone driving up the fire trail. You know, like that's pretty full on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the national parks people who are meant to protect the national parks have put logs and things and rocks across the fire trails so that you can't get in and fight them. And they've made them narrow so the fire trucks can't turn around. So the fire
brilliant.
trucks won't go in there. It's too dangerous.
Yes.
So
And all of this to make things better. For whom? For whom are they making it better? But I sincerely believe that there is. I agree with you when we're talking about the people at the very tippy top of the whole thingy, and I can prove this with Extinction Rebellion. It's kind of funny. I addressed it a little bit in my Happy Arbitrary Days video, but Sargon of Akkad made a video about Extinction Rebellion now, kind of more or less also proving the fact that they indeed may be considered a terrorist organization. Which they should be. Hell, I'm going to go on a limb and tell you Greenpeace is a terrorist organization. But hey,
I think there needs to be, and I don't know how you hold anyone to account for it, but what they've done to our children's little psyches over
yeah,
this and other issues is criminal. It's
Yeah, it is.
absolutely criminal.
it is. And they are scaring everyone. And by scaring everyone, you influence the paths they are going to take.
They're more likely to say yes to unreasonable
Yeah.
demands.
And then you get 18-year-old girls who are afraid to go outside of the house because they're going to get raped, even though there's statistically hardly any chance of that happening.
There was a woman sobbing at the the Sax ScoMo rally the other day. The entire time, this woman was sobbing in the front row. And by the time she finished, her makeup was everywhere because she was just the entire time. She was either cheering or had her head in her hands. Like, I took quite a few pictures of her actually because it was just like, oh my God, she's still going.
But it's almost as if it's how do you call it? Like they're performing. It's an act. They don't mean it.
Well, I did actually wonder if she was one of the ones that does the very dramatic, what do they call them? Those red things that they have at a lot of their rallies. They've got a name.
Yeah.
I've forgotten what they call
They're based on the series and the books from Margaret Atwood.
Anyway, you know what I mean. Like, I was wondering if maybe she was one of them because, yeah. But she seemed to be genuinely crying, but maybe she's one of those people that can force the tears. Do you know what I mean?
Well, in all fairness, I've been
Maybe
working.
it was sweat. Maybe her makeup was running because of sweat. It was bloody hot.
Maybe. If you rub your eyes often enough, they'll start tearing. Trust me. And working in psychiatry for as long as I have, there are people who are able to turn themselves into such an emotional distress state that they will cry, and they won't even know why.
Yeah. Oh, fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah, you think people cry because they're unhappy? No, some people feel unhappy because they cry and they have no clue why. Well, don't you have a good day? Yes. This wasn't the food nice? Yes, it was. Were people nasty to you? No, everything is fine. Then why are you crying? I don't know. Trust me on this one. It does happen,
That actually.
and it's quite interesting to deal with. Handmaiden's Tale, that's the one, Ludicrous. Thank you very much, mate.
I don't know how that person can even function in society. It's pretty.
Well, some of them can't. That's the thing. But that's why they want the government to take care of everything, because they bloody well can't take care of themselves. This is
Yeah, well, that's the other thing I don't get is all these people. They're not going out volunteering to help the firemen or anything. They're not like ready to go and like we don't need to now. It's pretty much finished in our area of what we can be useful for. But to help people evacuate animals and things like that. No. They're just there screaming that the government should supply air purifiers for every household and every workplace. So.
yeah, because that's not going to change the environment. Bloody fucking hell.
This is the new normal, therefore, and it's like no.
Welcome back, Michael. You've missed something, mate. I'm going to say we were much more interesting than Janice Fiamengo on this one.
Oh.
I'm a great fan of Janice Fiamengo, people, don't get me wrong. But where I do believe that feminism and the idiocracy they put our world in is a big deal, I think this is a bigger deal at the moment.
Yeah, and I do think to a degree it's them trying to work us into this global governance thing. Anything's an excuse to push that.
Yeah, well, it's what the old quotes say. It's better to live under robber barons than under the tyranny of people who want to do good for you. Because a robber baron's greed will be satiated at times, where someone who's acting out of your best intent will harm you while smiling and keep doing it because, hey, I'm only doing it to help you. Paraphrasing, obviously, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've got people here calling themselves climate refugees because of the bushfires. So,
Yeah, well, I'm going to assume that bushfire refugee I can live with, but what the hell does this have to do with the climate?
Yeah. We've actually had experts that they quote themselves say we can't attribute the bushfires to climate change. So, yeah.
Well, the whole thing is that people, and this is one of the things that pisses me off. People talk about climate change as if it's a done deal, as if it means something. We don't know why the climate is changing. We know the climate is changing. It's been doing that for, well, millions of years. Most people still don't realize that we're living in an ice age.
Well, as I said, their whole premise is that we got to the industrial age and Mother Earth said, I'm not going to do anything anymore. It's all up to you guys.
Yeah, as if as if we have that power. It's incredible. But no, I mean, I was talking with someone earlier this week, and I really need to make more work of this, or rather, I want to make more work of this. The thing is, we need to speak out, because if we don't speak out, the other side, whoever it is, are the only ones speaking, and they're doing their best to make sure that they are.
The only narrative you hear, every mainstream media is obsessed with bringing up climate change with every single news story that comes out.
Yeah.
It's yeah. It has to be annoying some people, surely. It has to be.
Well,
people have to be going, why are they pushing this so hard? Surely
this is a perfect example. I'm sorry for interrupting you. This is a perfect example of the 99 versus 1% rule. and a lot of people don't recognize this term. And when people say 1%, they always talk about the rich people. Well, fuck that, because that's bullshit. No, the 99 versus the 1% is this. If I have a group of people and I can convince 99% of those people that something is true, then even if the 1% has actual facts that I'm lying, they will ostracize that 1%.
Yeah, true.
And that's what we're seeing when it comes to feminism. That's what we're seeing when it comes to socialism. And that's what we're seeing when it comes to climate change.
And they're really using that in the media now, where they don't really care if what they put out isn't accurate at first. That's the story that gets run first. That's the one that gets believed and remembered. So,
in all fairness, they keep talking. There are still people who believe that 79% of scientists believe in climate change, man-made climate change.
Yeah.
No, that's not true. And whether it's true or not doesn't even mean anything, but it's not true. But as soon as you have one person who doesn't believe in climate change, they're going to be on a panel, and there's one guy who doesn't believe, and there's 5 guys who do believe.
Yep.
That's the image
if
people
they
constantly
even
get.
let that one guy who doesn't believe on the panel, Clyde, in Australia, you've seen our Q&A. It doesn't even let the other side of the narrative on at times. So
I think it was in Australia, a publishing house. I forgot the name of it. They're simply no longer publishing papers proving climate change isn't man-made.
the conversation, yep. And if you go on and even in the comments, if you make a comment that seems like it might be denying their narrative in some way, you are instantly banned. There's people who've been testing this, so.
And I mean, if we look at climate change, I mean, there is no study field of climatology. Maybe there should be, I don't know, but there isn't one. But geologists can pretty much say what the world looked like for a very long time. And astrophysicists can pretty much see what the world looks like for a very long time. And they're being ignored.
Yes.
And I'm like, seriously, how long have we been told that the sea levels are rising? By now we should have seen something.
Well, now we should have our inland sea back here in Australia.
Well, don't you have it back ever so often?
Well, occasionally, if we get enough water that they let come down from them. If they let the water come down.
But and to me, the biggest spoke in the wheel of climate change is the medieval warm period. I know I mentioned it a few times, and the more I read about it, the more amazed I am that people kind of gloss it over. Temperatures were higher than they are today.
Yes.
And not by a bit. We're talking we're talking about an estimate of at least 2 degrees higher than today.
Yes, we are. Sorry, the dogs were growling in the background. Yeah, Daz said the ABC and a few academics were attacking anyone that has a problem with us, and we brought that up earlier, Daz, and how they're saying Daz is Aussie.
Yeah, I know.
It's always been a matter if things are dry, then you don't chuck smoke butts out windows. You don't just have a bonfire. You don't light firecrackers. It's just, and if you do, you're not just a bloody idiot. You're negligent, and you could have killed someone. It's like driving without a seatbelt or drink driving or.
Daz and I had a little discussion under one of my videos on climate change. And I pointed out a few things. I'll make a video about what Daz and I talked about. Because in grand total, humans are at maximum, at highest, a 1/600th of an influence on the environment. And that's
we're like all animals. We have an impact on our environment, but how lasting?
Well, all the humans in the world, at best, a 1 out of 600 impact. And in all fairness, that's just me calculating CO2 and water vapor. That's not me calculating CO2, water vapor, nitrous oxide, methane, all the other greenhouse gases. Sorry, hiccup. And that is me calculating water vapor as only 800 parts per million, even though we know that there are places where it's lower than that, but there are far more places that go way higher. I mean, there are places that go up to 500 parts per million. Sorry, not 500, 50,000 parts per million. Whereas CO2 only has considered to be 400 parts per million.
Yes.
So water vapor can easily be 200 times as high as that. But if I'm only going to say, well, you know, water vapor is 8,000 times, 8,000 parts per million. So 400, 4,000, 20 times as much. Even if we calculate humans' influence with the water vapor that is 20 times as much as CO2, all those calculations combined, we still only are 1/600th of the cause. If we are a cause at all. I'm not sure if 1/600 is something to take serious. And people always say, yeah, but it's cumulative. No, it's
I
not.
honestly think that, you know, things like the industrial areas in China where they have literal diseases in the ground growing into their berries and things are probably a much bigger issue.
Yeah, but the problem there isn't so much CO2, it's pollution.
It's pollution. No, that's what I mean. I think pollution is a much bigger issue than climate change.
I mean, don't get me wrong, pollution is a problem everywhere.
If the climate wants to flip tomorrow, they're not going to be able to stop it.
No.
But,
no, we have very little
something
influence.
about pollution. So.
We have very little. And it's kind of funny because people still claim that humans are the biggest influence. The sun puts out per hour more energy than all humans combined use in a year. So I'm thinking the sun may have, you know, a slightly larger impact on this planet than we do.
Just a bit, yes.
It's
my favourite theory is by a guy called Douglas Cotton, and he sees it as something, climate itself, as something that is influenced from things from the centre of the Earth right the way out to the edge of the galaxy. It's like we've got the sun, we've got all these other cosmic things going on and different heat things going on.
Yeah, I
they
think
they disregard all of that. So
yeah. Now, I love it because some people are like, yeah, but if you look at Venus is a lot warmer than the Earth and they have way more CO2 in the atmosphere. But if you then go to Mars has even more CO2 in the atmosphere.
Yes, poor Mars.
And I'm
I
like,
was watching an Undone documentary earlier on Mars.
well, it's an interesting planet. Yeah. And there are people who say that once Mars was like Earth, and I'm like, well, maybe. But there is this thing called the Goldilocks zone. Every solar system has a Goldilocks zone. And a planet that's not in the Goldilocks zone will not have an environment able to contain life. At least not life as we know it. Obviously there is life. Yeah. I mean, if we look at... How are those little bears called? Those... I forgot the name of them.
Ewoks?
No. They're not really bears. They're more like bacteria. But they're shaped like six-legged bears. But I forgot the name. Sorry,
I've also been watching Suit Yourself, so Little Bears, Ewoks.
Yeah. Sorry. No, I can't remember. But they actually live in the how do you call it? Planets? No, not planets. Asteroids going through the air. In space itself, there are small pockets of those bacteria, of microbial animals.
Yeah.
And they survive. We have them on Earth in places where nothing else lives. Like on the edges of volcanoes, but also on places where it's so cold. Tardigrades! Thank you, Michael Keller. See, I need the stream. If it weren't for you guys, I'd be totally lost. But yeah, so we know all these things.
Yes.
And yet still we deny it. And the worst part is, I don't care about what we don't know. I mean, what we don't know, we don't know. It's just, we need to learn.
Well, that's
But
right.
it's almost as if climate change has turned into the new God. Where Christians in the back didn't know where something came from, therefore God did it. And I'm not Christian. I'm not trying to attack Christians. I don't mind people, their beliefs. But if you argue...
That's why we call them climate cultists. They have their belief system, they have their rituals, they have their chants, they have their meetings and where they get together and they glorify, well, not glorify, but they wallow in the spirit of climate change.
And they have their how do you call it, rituals, and it's a religion.
You can't question the religion.
Michael Keller, I'm pretty sure that I read a paper, I'll have to look it up again, that they found tardigrade, well, maybe not in space, but definitely on comets and whatnot. And this is, I'm sorry, not interesting now.
They have found some sort of bacteria or microbe or another, haven't they, and traces. Undoomed said they found traces of life once on Mars. So.
Yeah.
It must be true because Undoomed said so, and he's got a sexy voice.
Well, I mean, he's also a very good editor. I think I'm nicer though. Bleh. I have to say something now. I can't let that go over. Come on.
Yes.
No, that's silly. I like Undoomed. He doesn't know me, but I like his work.
He was one of the first YouTubers I started watching, and then he stopped making videos for a while there.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure why. Well, he's got great animated stuff, and I still think about animating my videos because at this point in time, I know I'm only a talking head. So maybe I need to make something for people to look at.
It's all right. Talking heads are okay so long as they're talking some sort of sense. Or entertaining.
Yeah. Well, I'm not funny like Bearing. The only thing I got going for me is I try to be factually correct. Which is apparently the worst kind of correct nowadays.
It is. It makes you even worse than your average white male.
Mm. Oh yeah, no, I'm definitely a racist. Which I kind of find a term that I don't agree with because, let's be honest, which race isn't Homo sapiens sapiens? Well, dogs aren't Homo sapiens sapiens, so there is that. But
they are sentient beings, though, according to the ACT government. So are cats.
Oh no, I'm completely agreeing with that. A lot more animals are sentient than people give them credit for.
I actually need to go and check that law out and see exactly, because they were giving them equal to human status kind of thing.
Yeah, that's bullshit. There are animals that score higher, but there are no animals that score equal to humans on planet Earth. You know how I know that?
How?
We are the only alpha predator on this planet. We have no challenger. Now, a bear can individually destroy us. A lion can individually one-on-one destroy us if we don't have anything in our hands.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And being a being with hands isn't even enough because gorillas and monkeys and apes have hands, but they can't do what we can. We are the ultimate...
progress past bashing things with a rock or poking it with a stick, maybe.
Yeah, but we are the ultimate apex predator on this planet. So yeah, there is that. Now that doesn't mean that we don't care for other animals. Hell, I have 2 rabbits. Does that then mean that I'll never eat rabbit meat again? No, don't be silly. I'll not eat these rabbits though. Because these are my pets. I like them. I love them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And when they die, they'll get a nice sending off. They will still not...
They get a little grave plot.
Sorry? Yeah, they'll
get a nice little grave plot.
Yeah.
And a rose bush.
Something like that. I'm still not going to eat them. But... I mean, I'm not against eating meat. fuck that. I need to eat
So
something.
Here's a slight sidetrack, but I don't understand people who get their pets, beloved pets, stuffed.
I I wouldn't do that
I find
either. That's a little bit creepy to me.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I just thought I'd bring that up.
Yeah, but be that as it may, I still have a few pets of mine that died. I still have them in the freezer because I still hadn't had the money yet to have them cremated. I want them cremated.
Oh, fair enough, fair enough.
But then again, it's in a freezer. I mean, it's not as if they're going anywhere. And
Well, yeah, it's like Walt Disney or whoever it is that's waiting to be.
yeah.
be
Well,
fixed up.
I'm not waiting for them to be brought back to life. I mean, that would be. You see, I've often thought about it. What if you could die today and they can bring you back in 100 years? And there have been many a story on that. But the one thing that they always ignore, everything you know, everyone you know, and everything you are is meaningless. Now, most stories will tell you that this is the case, and then they move on how you make a new life. Yeah, right. Let me rephrase that. Everything you know, everything you are, is meaningless. Now, start off from that. There's a reason why kids, for the first 18 years of their life, are basically useless. And now we're going to... Well, it's true. We love our kids, don't get me wrong. There's a reason we raise them.
It's like they do make you shake your head regularly. And you
Yeah.
think, when are you going to grow out of this?
And now imagine that you're 30 years old. That's not that old, right? 30 years, people with 30 years of life still have a lot of life ahead of them. So you come back to life.
Yeah.
Everything you know is useless. Everything you are is useless, and you have no one to fall back on except for a few people who are nice to you because you don't know why.
Yeah, yeah.
How are you going to develop? You're going to be
you're not.
devastated.
Yes.
I mean,
Okay.
I'd be
Right.
amazed if you could get out of bed to put your pants on.
Yes, you would feel almost disabled.
Yeah.
Disabled, wouldn't you?
Yeah. So yeah, there is that, and none of the stories that ever talk about people going into the future, they never talk about that aspect of it. Oh no, if we look at Buck Rogers, he goes into the future. Oh man, he saves society. Yeah, because obviously your 20,000-year-old knowledge is very useful now. I mean, going back in time, yeah, maybe, but going forward in time. Anyway.
Michael Keller. Gosh, Modway must be a good father.
Well, I am. I recognise the reality of things.
Yes, yes. No, it's my daughter often tells me I tell her depressing things sometimes, and it's like, well, you need to know. Like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, we may have to do an evacuation. We need to be organised. We have to do this. We have to do that.
I love the fact that people forgotten what fairy tales are all about.
Yes.
None of the fairy
I-
tales are nice.
I actually, one of the things that really annoyed when I first started getting into politics, the fact that they were taking magic out of childhood
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
replacing it with facts and science and tolerance. And it's, no. You're meant to
I-
explore through your childhood.
Yeah.
They're taking that off them.
Magic is the most important thing. I mean, obviously, you're going to learn to move away from magic. Magic is there to explain what you don't understand. But after a certain time, you start to understand things, which is a good thing.
Yes.
But,
and there is such a thing as overload, and I think a lot of kids are overloaded these days.
Oh,
That's why
aye.
they're
They have
why there's
absolutely
so many
no idea.
emotional, uncontrolled. Yeah, you know, I don't know. It's a sad thing.
And thank you, Paolo Costo. Indeed, Michael Keller. Buck Roger was useful because he knew things that they had forgotten. Bloody hell.
Are you serious, Daz? Turnbull, I wish Turnbull would fall out of a helicopter. Our ex-Prime Minister has been making trouble for the new Prime Minister, even though technically they're the same party, but they did sort of boot Turnbull out. He's been making trouble right through the election for the current government, which is the slightly more sensible than what we would have had government. I think we're all in that spot now. I'll have to look into that, Daz. After work, though.
Yeah, I'm really interested in politics, but at the same time, I have a lot to say, but not a lot of people who listen.
Okay. Turnbull, unfortunately, he's a bit of a darling of the media still, and of the left wing because of his
that goes hand in hand.
His backstabbing of the right wing Conservative Party.
Listen, if you're a favourite of the media, it goes hand in hand to consider you a left-wing ideologue. Because
Yes.
the media is so biased. It's painful.
It is, yes. Yes. So, Tony, I could do the same for Turnbull. Yeah. And Tony Abbott's actually being given a bit of love at the moment because he's actually out fighting fires, unlike the majority of politicians, current or past.
Well, that's the funny thing when they was talking about how the Prime Minister left Australia to go on holiday whilst the country was burning. And I'm like, yeah, because it really makes a difference where he is.
Now, we have a deputy prime minister for a reason. And as I said, he couldn't have done anything at that point. And I actually had a chat to my daughter about it. And I said, look, the man has 2 little girls. When would you like him to have his days off? If not Christmas, New Year's? When do you want him to be allowed to step away from governance? Because there's always something going on.
Yeah.
And he's just a figurehead at the end of the day for the federal government. So,
And it's not as if Hawaii doesn't have mobile phone and modern communication technology. So it's not as if they could have called him and say, hey, what do you think? Should we do something about this? And then he would say, yeah, sure, make it happen, and hang up.
yeah. Get the deputy to sign the paperwork. Get it done. Like,
It's not as if that was possible at all, obviously, because, yeah, he can't do that when he's in... There's not much else he could have done if he were in Australia anyway.
I mean, that's what I actually said to my daughter. I said the only thing he could have done different was maybe holidayed somewhere in Australia with his family, but he still deserves time with his young children.
Yeah.
It's got to happen sometime.
As I said, I mean, I mean, this is the thing. I mean, a lot of the people pushing certain narratives are globalists. They like the idea of globalism. And at the same time, they blame a guy for enjoying the fact that the world is global.
I'll just answer Michael. She was fine with that, Michael. It was sort of, she hadn't really thought of it from that perspective until I sort of said, because she likes spending time with me. She actually, when she was about 10 or so, she actually wanted me to stop working for a while. And when I did, she told me to go back to work. But, she recognizes that kids really do need to spend time with their parents. It's important that you get that uninterrupted time with your parents. Not that he was uninterrupted. He had media following him around, but...
Yeah, that's the location of the position, I guess. Not the location, the position.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it brings up another thing. Quite a few investment bankers are all of a sudden concerned about the environment. Same with a lot of mining magnates and things. Yet it's funny, the ones that they're praising are the same ones who have actually invested in renewables or invested in sustainable development. And the ones who don't get covered will get a paragraph at the bottom of the article, because we all know no one reads the full article in the newspaper.
This is the one. I've been looking into the whole renewable thing. But hell, when I started my channel, I kind of was like, oh yeah, no, I want to do more videos about renewable energy.
Yeah.
Because I really thought it was a good idea. I was standing behind it. Trust me.
It has pretty gift wrapping, the renewables.
The more I read about it, the more I started to learn about it. Well, let me put it like this. I never made a video promoting greener energy sources other than rapeseed. And that was mostly a joke. Actually, it wasn't. I mean, the story is still correct. But I found it funny because, hey, let's talk about rape culture, shall we? Oh yeah, this video is now officially demonetized.
We call it canola here.
Yeah, but that's because you're islanders. Islanders are funny like that. Everything has to be different for them. Bloody hell.
If you want, you can say. You just have to say struggle snuggle. That's what some of the YouTubers
Yeah, but
call.
you don't have struggle snuggle plans. Come on. It's kind of funny because I did make a video about how in the UK a woman complained about Aldi. Aldi was selling paint, and one of the paints they were selling was rape. Because it's a plant and it's a color. It's yellow, I know.
That vivid yellow, yes. It's very pretty.
But obviously that's not what she read. No. Aldi was encouraging rape culture. And I'm not even making a joke on this. Oh, bloody hell. So yeah, that's why I made my... No, biochemicals, biofuels are a decent idea. They simply are. It's not perfect, nothing is. But getting a little bit more CO2 in the atmosphere isn't a bad thing at all.
No.
But the more I learned about solar panel, wind turbines, electric cars, the more I learned it's a terrible idea. I have solar panels on my roof, people. I'll not lie. And in about 20 years, they're going to have to be taken off because, 20 to 30 years. Because that's when they have to be, recycled? 85% of all solar panels are being recycled, which is pretty high.
Again, they can't recycle, or they haven't figured out how to effectively recycle a lot of that material yet.
Well, no, that is true.
It's toxic.
But here's the fun. It's toxic to make them. It's toxic to recycle them. To mine the materials is toxic. Solar panels do more damage to the environment than a nuclear power plant could ever do.
Yes.
Including exploding doesn't do more damage to the environment than solar panels.
They really don't like hearing about that.
No, they don't. I mean, the biggest nuclear power...
Only fossil fuel shills object to renewables.
Yeah, well, I'm okay with...
Wouldn't you like it if the fossil fuel industry paid you for saying that? Like, I wish I got paid for all the things I'm supposed to be paid for. That'd be really great.
I don't mind the whole concept of renewables. But what we're doing now with renewables simply doesn't work. I mean, the amount of energy going into making one wind turbine and one wind tower. We're never going to earn that back. Well, that's not true. We are going to earn it back. No, we're not. Because we put energy into making something that will create energy. And it will make more energy than the energy we put into creating it. But it's creating a lot of toxic waste.
Yeah, and in those countries that have already got pollution issues, their land's already toxic, which is why they're busily buying up everyone else's agricultural regions. So,
and in the end, let's pretend that we have wind turbines everywhere. Well, okay. MIT proved that by having a lot of wind turbines, we're going to take energy out of the wind. You know, all those green arrows everyone is still looking at on the screen. If we make the wind go less fast, because that's basically what we're doing. Energy is constant. If it's in one thing, it's not in the other. If it's in the other thing, it's not in the first one.
Yeah.
So if we take energy out of the wind will blow less fast. The cooling effect winds bring will be less. Hence, there will be more warming in certain areas and more cooling in other areas.
Yeah, well, that's another thing they don't like you to bring up is the local local impact on microclimates of these solar farms and of the wind farms. Wind farms actually create a little bit of warming in each little patch
Yeah,
where they
yeah.
are changing the things.
They do. MIT made a nice little story about it. I think I made a video about it as well. But it's amazing. But as soon as you talk about that, yeah, but no. At this point in time, and I'm not in favor of it, don't get me wrong, there's plenty of things wrong with biofuels. At this point in time, it's the best thing we have. Now, mind you, coal are better than oil. Why are coal better than oil? Because in oil we also add other chemicals, which is pollutant. Burning wood is better than burning coal. Why? It releases certain pollutants, but most of them are pretty clean pollutants. And I still am amazed that people call CO2 a pollutant.
Yes, yes.
There
Well,
is a-
I'm amazed they object to us selling our coal when our coal is some of the, I don't know if purest is the right word, cleanest
I'm willing
coal
to,
you can
yeah.
get. But they'd rather China keep, digging up 1 billion tons a year, and yeah, and that's dirty coal,
Yeah.
coal. As opposed to
No, it is.
clean
It
coal.
is. It is. You've got dry coal and fat coal basically, and
Yes.
you don't want it to be too dry and you don't want it to be too fat. There's a balance of something. I'm sorry, I'm not well versed at
No,
that,
I just
but there is
I just know
differences.
that ours has a lot less impurities and things that when they burn the coal, is adding to that toxic,
Yeah,
you
and
get a more pure smoke.
and the funny thing, because Daz is saying this about the sun, solar. There's not enough sun in Australia, let alone in Germany. And this is completely true. And this is the one thing people always gloss over. Now, for example, would we build a solar farm in the complete desert of Australia? Then theoretically speaking, that solar farm could create enough energy for the whole world. Were it not for the small fact that the sun doesn't shine 24 hours in Australia. Or anywhere else, for that matter.
And they haven't really got an effective way to store that power at this point either. So even when we're pumping out sunlight,
there are ways to store energy. I mean, in my happy anniversary year, there was a battery able to spare 500 kilowatt hours of power. It's just kind of like a truck trailer.
yeah.
And 500 kilowatt power an hour, that's about 3 months of use in a modern society household. So, yeah, it's not enough. You're going to need about 4 to 8 of those trucks for each house. Oh, and those
exactly.
those batteries,
and those batteries are toxic themselves. So
are pretty toxic. There is a way to make non-toxic batteries, I've been told. For that you need salt water. There are salt water batteries, but they take up even more space.
well, that they could improve all the technology to such a degree as they're talking about with their solar towers and things like that. That it'll actually be practical one day. It's just not now. It's just not.
The thing is, and I'm not completely sure if I understand.
Outweighs benefit.
Yeah, no. The problem is, the reason why they can't is not because they don't want to. It's not because people aren't smart. The problem is that there is this law of thermodynamics.
Yeah.
And we haven't found anything that goes against the law of thermodynamics. And because we haven't, we can't. And will there one day be someone who can go against the law of thermodynamics? You know what? I'm going to say, yeah, sure, why not? But at what cost?
Yeah, it's not happening. It's not happening in the next couple of years. So.
And there are people who are saying, well, but batteries haven't improved much since blah, 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 blah. Yeah, that's true. How much more do you think batteries can improve?
Yeah.
Because, again, law of thermodynamics.
there's only so much. Yeah,
There's
as you
only
said,
so much.
whatever go, you've got to put it in to be able to take it back out. So, and everything takes energy. So everything makes a mess.
And indeed, Michael Keller, the fuel cell idea has been talked about a lot as well, which is also an option, but it's not a clean option. Not as clean as people like to think. But it's a better option than burning certain oils. That is true. The downside for hydrogen is that hydrogen is highly explosive, far more than any fuel at the moment. And once you burn it, the exhaust is water. Now imagine you're driving around in Switzerland and your car is dropping water behind it. Michael lives in Switzerland, people, and it can be really cold there. I think you don't want water on your roads.
That'd be really fun. Whee!
Could be fun in flat areas, perhaps. In mountainous areas, probably not so much. Just saying. I could be wrong. Anyway, I'd love to have you over again, Anya Talk. Thank you very much. But considering that we've been going on for 2 hours and I need a fast bio break again, I think maybe this is a good time to say, you know what? Let's call it quits for tonight.
Yes, I really must go and get some work done. I've got a couple of hours to do today, so.
Well, thank you very much for coming. I have to admit, I did enjoy your live streams of the different events you went to. We'll have to talk about that one soonish. Because Australia has its own Extinction Rebellion problem. It does.
Yeah, yes, we really do.
So that might be a good topic to talk about one day. Anyway, not going to start again. And yes, Michael, I did read the rest of it, but still. I'd like to thank you all for coming. I hope to see you all soon. Anything you want to say before I click the button?
No, thanks for watching. And you could probably get Daz or Daz and who was the other guy? Someone else was in here as well earlier. Johnny's List would be another one you could probably get in as well to give their perspective from their different areas. Daz is in the socialist state of Victoria. I'm not quite sure where.
Well, okay, let's put it up. Daz, you want to join us next Wednesday for a live stream? Talk about the good old forest fires?
No.
It's going to take time for him to answer, unfortunately. Well, I'm going to wait for the answer. Long live the revolution. Well, there is time for a revolution, that's for sure. It'll not be a nice one, though.
I can smell the fires again.
Yeah, I've seen the winds. The winds have slightly changed.
Yeah.
This is actually. I've been told that the wind map I'm showing you guys is actually pretty up to date.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So there is that. Long live the radiation. Okay, Daz, I'll contact you on. You're on Discord too, right? And who else did you want it?
Johnny's List. Johnny's List. He's always got interesting things to say.
Okay.
I think he's Aussie because he's always on Aussie channels.
He probably is. Okay. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for joining. Do share this stuff around because, man, oh man, there are lots of idiots out there. And it's not that we are brilliant. It's not that we are so fucking smart. The stuff we are telling you now is stuff that we knew in kindergarten when we were young.
Used to be considered common sense, a lot of it.
Oh, fucking hell, yeah. It's going to be roughly at this time, so I'm not sure if that makes it better. Johnny, are you on our Discord server as well, mate? Let me see. Okay, you can see the Discord server. There we go. Invite people. There we go here. I'm putting the Discord link in here so you can join there. Obviously, it's completely all right for me to contact me on Twitter as well. If we can't do it next Wednesday, maybe we can do it on another day, because it is an interesting.
Oh, you've always got interesting things to say, Johnny's List, and yeah, you like to look at all the various things it could or couldn't be. So, and
Well,
I like thinking
high
about
praise,
these
mate.
things.
High praise. I'd like to thank you all for joining us, and I hope to see you all next time. And I'd like to once again thank Anertak for joining me here. Always fun when you're here. Always fun. And this is where
Okay.
I push the button.
Someone just knocked on the door, so perfect timing. I will see you all later.
See you all later.